In this video, we're going to look at adding and subtracting rational expressions. And to start, let's just look at adding fraction. So adding a couple fractions. Hopefully this looks familiar to you, 3/4 plus 1/6, and you think, well, I need to find a common denominator. Well, there's a couple ways to do that. One is just to multiply the left side by the right side and the right side by the left side, or the first fraction by the second and second by the first. And so if you do that, then you get 24 on bottom for your common denominator, 22 on top, and then reduce. The other way to solve is to look for a least common denominator. So instead of using 24 for the common denominator, you can use 12. So that means multiplying by 4 on the first fraction, multiplying by 3 on the first fraction, and multiplying by 2 on the second fraction. And this way is more efficient, right? Like it's a little bit shorter. There's one less step. And when you're adding, these two numbers, it's not that big of a deal. But when we get into these bigger expressions, it becomes a kind of a big deal because adding another binomial can be a lot more work. So we're going to use this method to add and subtract rational expressions. So here are the steps. You're going to factor the tops and bottoms. You're going to cancel within each fraction. So reduce if you can, although you won't be able to too often. And then you're going to find the LCD. And here to do that, you're going to look for the missing pieces. And we will do an example in a moment to figure out what that means. And so we're going to build up each fraction so that it has the LCD. So that's really kind of the same thing. And then we're going to add or subtract. Remember, when you add or subtract, fractions, you keep the bottom the same and you add on top. And so this warning to use parentheses with subtraction, and that's just so you remember to distribute. Okay, so let's look at some examples. Okay, so on this first one, we're looking for a common denominator. Here, we can use 12. And so these are just numbers. There's no polynomials. So let's multiply this top, or the first fraction, by 2. And so you have to multiply the top and bottom. In the second fraction, I can multiply that by 3 on top and bottom. And so let's write this out first, although you might be able to skip this step. So minus 3 times 2x minus 3 over 12. Okay, so when you combine these, I would encourage you to let's write it in 2 steps to show some more work than maybe you want to. So let's just write it as one fraction. So 2x plus 1 and then minus 3 times 2x minus 3 all over 12. So a couple things with this. One, this step is more important when it's subtraction. So you don't forget that you have to distribute this negative because it's subtracting everything on top of this fraction. The other thing here is make sure you don't reduce right here. A lot of people will want to reduce, well, 2 over 12, I can just make that 6 on bottom, but then you're back to where you started. Okay, then on bottom, you're just going to keep the 12. On top, you can combine like terms. Actually, let's distribute this first before we combine like terms. So we get 2x plus 1 minus 6x plus 9 is all over 12. And then now combine like terms on top. So 2x minus 6x is minus 4x plus 10 over 12. Okay, and then we want to reduce if it's possible. So this factors, you could pull out a 2, or you can also take the shortcut of dividing everything by 2. So if you have these 3 terms, you can divide everything by 2, and that would give you negative 2x plus 5, and then divide this by 2 and to get 6. To show actually the math, let's take out a 2. Let's just take out a 2, not a negative 2, sorry. We'll leave it negative 2x plus 5 and then over 12. And then now this reduces, right? 2 goes into 12 6 times. And so you get negative 2x plus 5 over 6. And that is reduced. Okay, real quick, I'm looking at this, and I forgot to distribute my 2. We'll see how messy this gets. That makes this number here plus 2. Okay, so that makes this number plus 2. And so then when we combine like terms, we get negative 4x, and then 9 and 2 make 11. So this would be 11. And then that does not reduce. So we just have, let's get rid of this and get rid of this. And this is negative 4x plus 11 over 12. You could split this into 2 fractions if you want and reduce, but there's no, doesn't make it any better necessarily. So we'll just leave it like that. So with mistakes and errors, just make sure that you're watching for them. They're very easy to make. This is why, one of the reasons why you check your work in the back of the book, because if you didn't, you'd think, well, I did that right, I'm moving on. But really, we forgot to distribute up here. So be mindful of errors, and I apologize for my mistake. Okay, number two is nice because x squared minus 9 and x squared minus 9 are the same. And so we can just add the top. So we get 5x plus 1 and then minus, and use parentheses here because you will forget to distribute. It's one of the most difficult things about these problems actually, is when you're subtracting and there's more than one term on top. And then go ahead and distribute. And I'm going to watch to make sure I do that correctly. 5x plus 1 minus 4x plus 8. Nope, that's not a 4. It's just plus 2. I did 4 times 2. It's negative 1 times 2. And then over x squared minus 9. Now you can combine like terms. So this gives you x plus 3 over x squared minus 9. Okay, so this is combined, but it's not reduced because we can factor. So just like when you simplify rational expressions, now we have this problem. We have a difference of squares on bottom. So it's x plus 3 and x minus 3. And so those x plus 3 terms will cancel, leaving you with 1 over x minus 3. Okay, let's look at a couple more. And if you feel comfortable, try to pause the video. This one's a little different from the other ones because we have to factor. So here, these aren't the same. And then what you want to do is factor everything. So let's rewrite this and factor the bottom. We have a difference of squares. And then here we can take out an x. And now we're ready to look for, nothing cancels, so we're ready to look for a least common multiple or least common denominator. And so you're just looking for what's missing. So over here I have an x plus 1, x minus 1. There's no x minus 1 over here. So let's put 1 there. But if you put it on bottom, you have to put it on top, so you don't change the value. Okay, and then here I have an x, but there's no x here. So let's put an x over here. And then now the bottoms look the same. On top, distribute, and on bottoms, just keep it the same. So it's x plus 2 times x minus 1 all over x times x plus 1 times x minus 1. And then on bottom, in general, your method or your decision would be not to distribute on bottom. I'm not going to suggest you do that. You could, but definitely don't do it yet. On top, you always want to distribute and combine like terms. So we have x plus 2x minus 2 when we distribute. And then on bottom, it's x times x plus 1 times x minus 1. And then on top, combine like terms to get 3x minus 2 over x times x plus 1 times x minus 1. And you can see the top doesn't factor, so it doesn't simplify, and you can just be done there or stop there. Okay, get number 4 shot. pause it and try to think about it. This one is kind of tricky though, because here, these almost look the same. We have a minus 2 and 2 minus a. So let's look at this trick of multiplying by, let's think about this factoring. So let's factor a negative 1 out of the bottom here. So a minus 2. And if I take out a negative 1, then it becomes negative 2 minus a, or plus a rather. Let's do this in a couple steps. Okay, so this is confusing to work with. So let's move the negative. Let's just make the 3 negative up top. And that's allowed because there's only one term there. It's like the whole fraction is negative. So let's make it 5 over a minus 2, and then minus a negative 3 over, and then we're going to rewrite this as a minus 2. Notice we didn't change the signs, we just changed the order. And now we can just subtract the negative, so that becomes 8 over a minus 2. This is when you definitely probably want to pause the video and rethink about it, or rethink this problem, or think more about this problem. You also might want to just watch this again, try it again on your own, because factoring out that negative is pretty difficult to do. Okay, and then some practice. I would take the time to do these. If you have this worksheet in front of you, try these 3 problems, or at least try one at a time. So pause the video and work these out, and then we'll go through them kind of quickly. So first you factor. Numbers that multiply to negative 2 and add to 1 are positive 2 and negative 1. And then you have a difference of 2 squares. So x plus 1, x minus 1. And then look for what's missing. So I have x plus 2. I don't have an x plus 2 here. So let's multiply that by bottom and top. I don't have an x plus 1 over here. So we'll multiply that times bottom and top. And then the top we can write as 1 fraction, or the whole thing we can write as 1 fraction. The top you will want to distribute. On bottom, don't distribute yet. And do not cancel anything out. You cannot look to reduce until the very end. And that doesn't happen too often, really. So let's FOIL these. We get x squared. It'd be 3x plus 1x is plus 4x, and then plus 3. And then distribute to get 2x plus 4. The bottom doesn't change. And then combine like terms. So x squared plus 6x plus 7. And then you do not need to multiply those out. You can, it would take you a while, and it's probably just unnecessary. So you can leave it in this form, that's fine. One thing to make sure is that this does not factor, which it does not. If it did factor, then maybe you could cancel a binomial out. Okay, on the next one with your factoring, remember a greatest common factor. You take out an 8x, sorry, just an 8. And then I'm going to do this in two steps in one here. So I'm going to take out a 4 first. So take out a 4 from this bottom part. Oops, so you can see that a little bit. Take out a 4 from the bottom part, and then a difference of 2 squares. (9x) you can't do anything with. And let's do the same thing over here. Let's take out a 3 minus 1x, and then minus 2. And then we can factor this to x minus 2 times x plus 1. Okay, now here's a step that will make your life a little easier is you can reduce here, right? And then also like notice that this cancels, and that doesn't hurt my least common denominator. I don't need that x minus 1. So I would want to go ahead and cancel this. This would turn to 2, and this would turn to 3. So I have 2 over x plus 1 minus 3 over x minus 2, excuse me, times x plus 1. Okay, so then when you look at what's missing, we have an x plus 1. I have that here. I have an x minus 2. I'm missing the x minus 2 here. So we multiply by x minus 2. And then I'm going to go ahead and distribute. So 2x minus 4 minus 3 over x minus 2 times x plus 1. And then combine like terms to get 2x minus 7. Excuse me. Minus 7 over x minus 2 times x plus 1. Oh, and I just saw that my x went away. Let's see. So this would be 3x. This would be 3x. And then this would be negative x minus 4. Let's just rewrite that. Negative x minus 4 over x minus 2 times x plus 1. So once again, with errors, just make sure you watch for them. It's real easy to drop something off from step to step. Okay, and then last one, give this a shot on your own if you haven't already. Pause the video and factor this out. You have x minus 5 times x minus 5 on bottom. Two numbers that multiply to 25 and add to negative 10. It's a perfect square trinomial. And then here you can take out a 2. And so let's look at what's missing. I have an x minus 5 here, and I have an x minus 5. I have an x minus 5, but you don't have another one. So even though it's the same, you have to have the same number of terms. And then I have a 2 here, and I'm missing a 2 here. And make sure you put it on top and bottom. And then pay close attention on top. Anytime you have a negative, that can be kind of daunting. I'm going to use a parenthesis here and then FOIL. So we have x squared, and then minus 5x minus 4x is minus 9x, and then plus 20. And then on bottom, we're just going to leave it all. I'm going to write it as x minus 5 squared since they're the same. And then distribute and combine like terms. So 2x minus x squared plus 9x minus 20 over 2 times x minus 5 squared. And then this gives us negative x squared plus 11x minus 20 all over 2 times x minus 5 squared. So these problems are some work. They will take you some time, but you are also practicing a lot with them. So because you're practicing your foiling, your least common denominators, factoring, well, some foiling too, combining like terms. There's a lot in each problem. So take your time. As you saw in this video, like mistakes will be made, especially when there's just so many steps you're taking. So watch out for mistakes and reach out if you have questions. Good luck.